today we're talking about it isn't an either or world. I remind you that we talked about the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind book last month, and so moving on now to it's not an either or world. We are both human and spirit, a mashup of divine perfection and human flaws. The personal challenge for each of us is to live with the paradox, to overcome our human errors while seeking the fuller expression of divine perfection. Ernest Holmes said in the Science of Mind textbook, in the chapter The Way It Works, the mind is filled with accumulated doubts of the ages, as though a vast abyss of doubt, fear, and uncertainty were standing between you and your desires. That was abyss. Shall I read it again? The mind is filled with accumulated doubts of the ages, as though a vast abyss of doubt, fear, and uncertainty were standing between you and your desires. We carry in our DNA fear. That's what has kept us safe as a species since we started. That fear has protected us, kept us vigilant. And now it's time to let that go, to make a point of living in confidence and living in peace and living in harmony. Spirituality is a journey toward acceptance rather than an attempt at perfection. Self-love and acceptance is the key to growth. Without it, you cannot move forward in life. Denial keeps you stuck, repeating the same negative pattern over and over again. We all have a history of addiction of some sort. Accept it. If you're angry, accept it. If you're besieged with self-doubt, accept it. If you're filled with fear, accept it. Change can only happen by admitting your errors through a filter of forgiveness and love. I've shared, I think, the mantra that I have adopted for myself, and that is that when things that are negative come up for me, things, recollections of perhaps situations and circumstances where I don't feel really good about myself or I don't feel good about someone else, just the mantra of forgive it. Forgive it. Because who wants to carry that kind of angst and old business around with us? It takes up space in my mind, and it takes up space in my heart. And as that's true for me, I believe it to be true for everyone else. Emerson observed this: there's a crack in everything God has made. There's a crack in everything that God has made. And perhaps it's through these cracks that God shines through. There's a writing that I'd like to share with you that's been my favorite for a very long time, but I don't think I've shared it with you before. It was written by Frederick Buechner, who is a minister, and then he became a philosopher, and he's just a gentle spirit. I think he was Lutheran, but he said this, and originally this was published in his book called Wishful Thinking. He writes, "One holy place I know is a workshop attached to a barn. There's a wood-burning stove in it, and it's made out of an old oil drum. There's a workbench, dark and dented with shallow, crammed drawers, behind one of which a cat lives. There's a girly calendar on the wall, plus various lengths of chain and rope, shovels and rakes of different sizes and shapes, some worn out jackets and caps on pegs. An electric clock that doesn't keep time. On the workbench are two small plug-in radios, both of which have serious things wrong with them. There's several metal boxes full of wrenches and a bench saw. There's a couple of chairs with rungs missing. There's an old yellow bulldozer in its tracks, caked with mud, parked against one wall. The place smells mainly of engine oil and smoke. Both smoke from wood and pipe smoke. The windows are small, and even on bright days, what light there is comes through mainly in window-sized patches on the floor. I have no idea why this place is holy, but you can tell it the minute you set foot in it, if you have an eye for that sort of thing. For reasons known only to God, it is one of the places God uses for sending God's love through to the world. End of quote. And Emerson said, to remind you, there's a crack in everything God has made. Perhaps it's through that crack where God enters. Perhaps our open wounds are an open invitation for healing. Our open wounds are an open invitation for God to shine through. So we resist our pain, we resist our cracks, we resist our addictions, and yet those are the places that cause God to shine through, that give us an opportunity to come to our deepest self, to come to our deepest knowing. The open wounds are a place for an opportunity for healing. We all have our wounds and challenges in life. They're common to everyone. You're not in this life to succumb to human tragedy. You're here to triumph over it. The command of the universe is upward and onward to the greater good. So noticing, attending to, and paying attention to our wounds. Pay attention to the places where the cracks are, and knowing that that is the place where God can shine through. Parker Palmer, who is an educator and a Mennonite, gentle soul, in his work, The Healing the Heart of Democracy, talks about habits of the heart. He's been quoted as saying, you only really need two habits of the heart. You need chutzpah and humility. You need the chutzpah to know that you have a voice when speaking and things worth saying. And you need the humility to know that it's vital to listen, because you may not have you may not have it right at all, or only a very partial grasp on the truth. So I think it's in holding these paradoxes that we start to sort things out. There's so much in our lives that we're all trying to live that's just not either or. Even though we've been trained to think binarial codes, I mean that in the metaphorical sense of that term, life is both and. We can't live from that polarized place. It is not an either-or universe. We live in the vast expanse of the middle ground. We know that there are never any totally evil people, and there are never any totally good people. We all vacillate between the goodness and the evil. We have the potential of both. in the symbol of the Tao, where the dark and the light has the seeds of the opposite within them. That's how we live. Not in polarized either or ways of being and ways of living. We live on the continuum of good and bad, pain and joy, anger and peace. And our goal is to come to some sort of balance, a place where both and resides. I breathe in and I breathe out. It would be really dangerous for me to say, I think I'm basically a breathing in kind of person. So that's where I'm going to devote my life. It must be in and out. It must be the yes and the no. It must be the and the both. Living in the harmony of the balance of the in-between. I believe that religious science is the truth, the answer. But how many people would disagree with me? That's fine. I have part of the truth. To my way of thinking, I've got the truth with the big T. There are so many that would disagree who live a very spiritual, very deep, very rich life. It's not either or, it's and both. And when we remember to put the and in every one of our sentences, in every one of our judgments, when we learn to recognize that other people have different ideas that are right and correct for them, there is no definable truth or reality. It is what we believe, what works for us. It is and both in all aspects of our lives. And to remember that is to step into personal peace and personal harmony. I am an individual with a voice. I am also embedded in a community of which I'm highly dependent, from which I came and to which I will return. And I include the community of the natural world in that. And I need both the chutzpah and the humility to be fully, to be there now, and to be there in a life-giving way. Yes, I need to have the courage to believe what I believe and to stand in my beliefs. And the humility to know and understand that I don't have all of the answers. I am not totally right. I haven't spoken much about my sister. My sister knew she was right. And there was no arguing with her. And I think about my sister, who's not here with us any longer, but I know she's around. I think about her in this whole political atmosphere. And if she had not died, she would die because of a heart attack. I said to her one time, she and her husband were, I said, wouldn't you rather be happy than right? said, I am right and I know I'm right. And she would go down to the ground fighting for being right. What does that get you? What possible difference does it make? Who cares but you? Yes, having chutzpah is important. Having the courage to speak your truth, the courage to say what you believe, and the humility to leave space for other people to have their opinions and their ideas. Because just like the symbol of the Tao, the I Ching, there is always the seed of the opposite in every encounter. There is always truth. And, I think I have the answers. I think I have all of the truth. But as I said, how many other spiritual belief systems are there in this world that are really working for other people? Do I care what other people believe as long as they are satisfied, as long as it gives them an opportunity to know their deepest, richest self, to be in love? And we can say, yes, but, what about? Yes, and. Yes, and. So that's my message for you today. It is not an either-or world. It is a yes and both world. And both. And when we come to that place, to be at peace with that, to be willing to take a look, that doesn't mean you have to accept other people's point of view necessarily. It doesn't mean you have to embrace it. It doesn't mean you have to believe what other people believe. It only means having the humility to be willing to take a look, maybe cherry pick something of this that I believe and something about this that I believe. And when we come to that space, that is the very understanding of peace. The very basis and foundation to allow other people to have their point of view and to have the empathy to take a look and say, I've never seen it that way. I've never experienced it that way. And to have the humility to allow yourself to entertain a different point of view. Because we don't live in an either-or world. So, Dr. Charles Michael has this affirmation that I'd like to share with you in closing. I'm a perfect spiritual being living through an imperfect human experience. I am guided into wholeness by the divine. Let me repeat that. I am a perfect spiritual being living through an imperfect human experience. I am guided into wholeness by the divine. We all have our cracks. We all have our places for God to shine through for healing. We all are experiencing imperfect human lives. But that imperfection is the opportunity for us to come to an understanding that we are perfect spiritual beings. The very core, at the very foundation, at the very essence of each one of us is God's perfection. And everything else in our human experience is an opportunity, the cracks, for God to shine through. I am a perfect spiritual being living through an imperfect human experience. I am guided into wholeness by the divine. I love you all. Namaste. So if Kate and Steve would join me. I allow myself to be aware that this place, this space that I call Circle's Edge, is a place known only by God. Why? Love shines through. This is a place where the light of God shines through with love. And I move into my deepest essence, my perfect divine self. Place where I know that the love of God vibrates and pulsates. And reminding you that as I speak in the first person, I am speaking for you. I absolutely acknowledge that place within you where God shines through in love, in peace, in wholeness, and in perfection. I embrace the imperfections of the human experience has the potential for healing, the potential for aligning with the divine. I accept the both and. And I allow myself to move toward a higher and higher vibration of the divine. With a clear understanding that as I'm filled with humility, I am made stronger. As I'm filled with humility, I am made more empathetic and more loving. As I'm filled with humility, I am made more peaceful. As I'm filled with humility, I become more powerful in my spirituality. It is in my humility God has an opportunity to shine through. I am so grateful to be in this place, in this space, with each one of you. Because the radiance of the collection of Circle's Edge is dazzling. And I'm deeply grateful to be in the presence of perfect spiritual beings. And so I just get out of the way and I admire God shining through the cracks in our humanity. And I declare it good. I declare it very good. And I say it so it is.